Over the years, we have seen numerous cases where police officers have successfully captured notorious criminals, even bringing down corrupt presidents, and we thought we had seen it all. With great power comes great responsibility, and sometimes the wrong person ends up being framed for a crime they didn't commit. But in this case, we are going to look at cops who thought they are on top of the world, catching one of their own. But did they do it right? Did an FBI agent get arrested for not identifying himself as a police officer? And does wrongly arresting members of law and order call for the arrest with heavier punishments? Stick around as we check a look at bizarre cases where dumb decisions from cops take them to a rather offensive position.
Take my weapon off, okay?
26 Franklin,
I'm not going to put you in cuffs.
Putting the narrative for this call.
Where's
That
it at?
subject he's got detained,
Okay. I've got my
claiming
weapon
to be a
on my
federal
right.
agent.
You do got, is it on, do I have permission to take it off?
No, you don't have permission.
Okay, just hang tight right here. I'm not cuffing you.
So why don't we just kick things off with a crossover story between an FBI agent and a police officer? The case of mistaken identity between a Florida deputy and an FBI agent was a significant fiasco that ended up making headlines and raising eyebrows. Officer Gordon found himself in a tangled situation when he received a call from a man claiming to be an FBI agent and asking to meet him in a nearby parking lot. This is a classic example of what happens when someone doesn't verify the identity of the person they're meeting, especially when speaking to a police officer. I do, but I don't understand what the problem is with your meeting me at the office. I'll talk to the U.S. Attorney's Office about it. Cut off the recording device now. Okay, well, I will when I leave the area, sir. The officer's suspicions should have been raised when the agent asked him to turn off his recording device, but Officer Gordon continued recording the conversation. This was a smart move, since it provided evidence of what had transpired, which, as you can imagine, didn't quite end well for Officer Gordon. Despite Agent Hatton's attempts to convince Gordon that he was an FBI agent, the officer remained skeptical and demanded to know how the agent got his number. It's not surprising that the officer called for backup and handcuffed Agent Hatton, given the situation he was in. However, things were getting out of hand. Closing the car door on Hatton made the situation worse, especially given the hot weather in Florida. This was a poor decision on Gordon's part, and it's fortunate that Agent Hatton's condition didn't deteriorate further. Officer Gordon was concerned about Agent Hatton's investigation into the conduct of law enforcement organizations in North Florida. The officer was aware of the rampant corruption within the police department and was anxious about being implicated in it, which may have been why he was so hesitant to believe Agent Hatton's claims of being an FBI agent. Let's say his ego got the best of him. The hour-long incident occurred on December 20 in a parking lot off U.S. Highway 98 in the coastal fishing community 45 miles southwest of Tallahassee. Agent Hatton, who was wearing a bulletproof vest and had limited access to air conditioning, began experiencing medical issues due to the heat. He was taken to a local hospital and treated for dehydration and heat exhaustion, escaping a close call. The FBI and the Sheriff's Office had a meeting to ensure that such situations don't happen again in the future. They agreed to maintain reasonable transparency in future operations to avoid similar misunderstandings. This, in turn, led to opening the Pandora's box of sorts. The records exposed normally secretive movements of the FBI, whose recent public corruption investigations in North Florida have led to numerous guilty pleas from government officials, including former Tallahassee City Commissioner Scott MADDOCKS. They also highlighted the FBI's interest in the Sheriff's Office, though it's unclear whether that goes beyond a mere traffic ticket. Franklin County Sheriff A.J. Smith, who's running for a second term, said his opponents likely complained to the FBI to score political points in an election year. Our next case looks at a bizarre and ridiculous incident where a former FBI agent was arrested by the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department for no apparent reason. As it turns out, Roger Golubski, the former detective, was wrongly accused of sexually assaulting 2 black women between 1998 and 2002. The FBI was investigating the Kansas City Police Department for their conduct when they stumbled upon the forgotten case of Roger Golubski. The former detective had been exchanging drugs for information and had a long history of sexually assaulting women during his 35-year-long career as a police officer. During his time on the force, Golubski had testified against a young black man named LAMONTE McINTYRE, saying that he had committed a double homicide. This resulted in 24 years of wrongful imprisonment for MCINTYRE, who was eventually released. The FBI arrested Golubski on 6 counts of sexually assaulting 2 black women, to which he pleaded not guilty, despite his lawyer's request for him to be released due to his health issues. The jury rejected it, and he was detained for regular health checkup. As more and more of Golubski's crimes were uncovered, it became clear that the Kansas City Police Department needed serious restructuring. One of Golubski's informants was a black woman named RHONDA TRIBUE, whose body was found in 1998. Though the investigation was initiated, it reached no conclusion, leaving her case unsolved. The arrest of Golubski has been applauded by many civil rights activists across the country. As TRICIA BULNELL, the director of the Midwest Innocence Project, a full investigation into the abuses in Wyandotte County and systematic reforms are needed to ensure that no other police officers and public officials can continue to abuse their power. And finally, the FBI's arrest of 2 Drug Enforcement Administration officers in Nassau County, Florida, charged with drug-related offenses by the DAA, a law enforcement agency known for aggressive efforts to combat the drug trade. Sergeant James HICKOCKS was arrested with his hand in a cookie jar, selling seized drugs, including cocaine, to willing buyers. His greed knew no bounds, as he also mixed drugs with other substances to make up the difference in weight and kept parts for himself. The FBI found 3 shoeboxes filled with $100,000 in cash in his bedroom closet and another $200,000 stashed in his garage. When asked where the money came from, HICKOCKS attributed his claim to borrowing money from his gambling habit. HICKOCKS' behavior is clearly a violation of his duties as a law enforcement officer. As if that wasn't enough, he became a gun holder under the influence of drugs. Erie's conduct was not only illegal, but also dangerous, for he was entrusted with the law. The arrest of these officers comes as a shock, making the public wonder how deeply ingrained corruption is in law enforcement agencies. Sheriff Bill LEEPER expressed his disappointment, saying, "I believe we must make sure law enforcement officers who break the law are held accountable. I was shocked, disappointed, disgusted, and beyond angry when I heard the allegations. These were some of the shocking times when the cops ran into the FBI." The arrest of these officers raises the question of how many other officers have been acquitted of similar crimes. The DEA and other law enforcement agencies should conduct internal investigations to weed out corrupt officials and restore public trust. The consequences of corrupt regulators are dangerous. In conclusion, these police actions are unacceptable, and it is important to ensure compliance by those charged with enforcing the law. It is a wake-up call for regular, thorough investigations into law enforcement to weed out corrupt officials. Clearly, the phrase "with great power comes great responsibility" has been thrown out of the window with the cases we learned about today. What do you think of our list? Do you think there are more corrupt officials out there? Sound off in the comments below. And while you are at it, make sure to hit subscribe and leave a like for more such content. Thanks for watching.